Institute for Faith and Freedom at Grove City College presents Liberty Mail with the Student Fellows of Faith and Freedom.
Welcome back to Liberty Mail with Aaron Jenks
and Grace Riley.
And we are here in the underground studio at Grove City College working for the Institute for Faith and Freedom. It's a beautiful day in Pennsylvania. We've had like 70 degrees, so we've been living life outside. And then also it was nice for Newt Gingrich to come. The Honorable Newt Gingrich came this past Thursday and did a talk at our annual Reagan lecture. He spoke about some really cool stories from when he was working with Reagan, and then the Republican Revolution in the 90s. Talked about him working with Clinton. It was all around a great event. And our very own Grace Riley got to sit down and talk with him, which was very cool. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. It was very, very cool and an honor to sit down with him. It was a great conversation just talking about the red wave in 94 and how he kind of took on his role as Speaker of the House, and also about what his advice for Gen Z and moving forward is going to be, looking at the current political state. So a really interesting and cool conversation. So we'll have that posted soon, so just be looking out for that.
And then I thought it was really cool. I didn't know that the Republicans didn't have a majority. So they earned the majority in 94, I think I remember him saying. And then it was a 40-year gap of them not having it. And Newt Gingrich planned with a bunch of other senators and congressmen to work towards preparing for that red wave and then having the majority, which was kind of unthinkable at that time. For 40 years, you don't have the majority, you're in the minority, and then all of a sudden, you're thrusted into power.
And it was a true red wave where they took both chambers back in 94, and he became the new Speaker of the House, and he was the head of the Contract with America, and he just did so much in office where he was such a huge conservative influence in our country as a whole. He really did a lot to kind of move us in that direction, and it said he worked with Reagan, and it said that from Reagan's conservatism went to Barry Goldwater and to Newt Gingrich, so he's a really important, really awesome figure, and we're so thankful that he was able to come speak to us.
Yeah, he's worked with so many impressive figures in American history, and it was good to sit down and just listen, which he also broke like our attendance record in this past year or two. It's almost like 800 people coming, and so the town and community really reacted to him and enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was a really, really great event all around, and a really great 15th annual Reagan Lecture Series.
But then connecting kind of, not on purpose either, his red wave to what is the topic of today's podcast. And we want to talk about the upcoming midterm election for a number of Senate races, but we'll specifically head into the PA Senate race. And then we want to hit all these midterm or any elections, gubernatorial elections around the country right now. And we really want to highlight, okay, what are the platforms and what is the kind of the campaigning going on at a national level versus these local, more state levels?
Yeah, and just breaking down in general, like this is a really huge election. These midterms are a really big deal. A lot of big issues at stake, especially with the Biden presidency going on now and having the left in the executive branch looking at the midterms. This could be really big, and the Republicans look to be poised for another red wave as in 94, so it'll be really interesting to see what happens today on Election Day.
Yes, and if you are familiar with any of the work that the Institute for Faith and Freedom publishes, hopefully then you know Checkpoint, checkpoint.org or .com. We'll post that in our link underneath, either on YouTube or Spotify. We'll put a link for you, but we had a recent publication about the red wave coming up and about this midterm election if you want to check out further information on this topic.
Yeah, so Aaron, what do you think, just looking at the midterms overall, why do you think they're so important now especially?
Yeah, well, I'll start with, I thought Newt really hit this on the head, and I've been thinking about this for the past couple of weeks, just watching either feeds on Instagram or reading articles, and the Honorable Newt Gingrich said that the left is not targeting topics, A, that are winnable, in his opinion, but then B, that are topics that aren't even getting talked about, right? And he said, so it's really good for anyone on the right now talking about inflation, talking about the inflation affecting especially grocery costs. He had a great little bit about, okay, who's doing the grocery shopping? And a lot of times it's women in the household or, the mothers of the household. And they come back, he said, one of his friend's wives comes back every Sunday angry and irate about how much money they spent. So hopefully that's going to target and push either suburban mothers and suburban women towards the right.
Yeah, it's really interesting, too, to look at just the state of the country right now as it impacts everyday Americans, because Americans every day wake up and they have to think about these things. How much can they afford to spend on groceries? How are they going to feed their families? How much can they spend on gas? And these have been really real issues that have faced Americans now. And what's interesting is the left's kind of lack of addressing this. It was interesting, President Biden delivered a speech last week where he called conservatives a threat to democracy, and there was zero mention of any of these important issues that Americans really care about and are suffering through in a way. There was no mention of inflation, and the inflation numbers have gone up significantly since he took office. There was no mention of everything going on at the border, no mention of the drug crisis, no mention of anything having to do with the economy, no mention of crime. And Doug Mastriano just said, by the way, too, that in Pennsylvania, the race we're going to get more in depth about, crime has been the most important issue because it's risen so much.
And especially in Philadelphia.
Yeah, absolutely. So with all of those very real important issues, the left is kind of out of touch, I think, when it comes to addressing them.
I really agree. And it's so weird because we can speculate almost why they will go off and why they will only target maybe equity programs or why they're targeting freedom of choice for a woman. And we can speculate about that. But the facts are that they are not targeting topics that are kind of your dining room table topics and the topics that are affecting families around the country. Majority of people, when they answer a recent Pew research survey, yeah, just a mind block. But they were answering that, yes, inflation and gas and groceries are the biggest three, but all in one kind of topic that they are going to be voting on this midterm, and actually today or tomorrow.
Yeah, no, it is. And the Daily Wire also just reported and found similar data, which was that people said that their top issues that they were concerned with looking at this election is the economy, crime, and the border. So, and it found also, so they were also asking people, so what do you think that both parties are focusing on then, if you think those are your top issues? And people said the right was more focused on those issues, and the left, they thought that their top issues were January 6th, they thought their top issues were abortion and other social issues like that, which that's not the type of thing that Americans are waking up and thinking about. There are really huge, significant problems that need to be dealt with, and I really think that the left is missing the mark.
And think about how this goes back until President Biden took office, is that we have, 2 years of an effect of, like you said, crime being on the increase in multiple cities around the country, and that's an increasing problem, especially in PA right now.
Yeah, especially Philadelphia, as you said.
Yes, and so that, and then especially prices of gas going up over the past 2 years, and it's not going down anytime soon. There's horrible indications coming from the Middle East and Saudi Arabia right now, and then grocery prices are skyrocketed, and that's been happening for at least a year. And so it's all building up right now, and our hope right now, or what we'll see is to happen, is that, yes, we'll have this kind of renewing of that red wave that we were talking about in 94.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's this funny tweet has kind of been going viral. I'm not sure who said it. I think it's just been across a few accounts just saying, before you vote, go fill up your gas tank, buy your groceries, and then think about who you're going to vote for.
Well, Newt said that too. He said, what's going to happen on Election Day? People are going to drive to the wherever they're going to vote, and they're going to fill up their tank, and they'll be like, "Oh my gosh, I got to pay $4. Oh, now it's $4.20 or $4.35 in PA. Yikes!"
Yeah, exactly. And those are just really real issues. So, I guess just looking at that, what do you think will happen? You think we'll have this red wave, or what are your overall predictions?
Yeah, I mean, if you're kind of average American, I think, or your average Joe, and you're on social media looking. It's so hard. It's like it almost seems like a 50-50 toss-up because everything you see on social media or cable news it definitely heavily leans to the left, and they're talking about topics other than inflation, other than crime. You don't even see kind of crime on social media. But then from our point of view, where we actually spend time throughout our week reading articles, spend time listening to speeches like President Biden's past week, it seems that the people that are similar to us and that actually do the kind of a step forward and do some more reading or listening, it's indicating towards that red wave because, like we said, the Republicans are running on topics that are problems in everyone's household right now. So they're at least addressing those topics. Even if you don't agree on how they're going to handle those topics, you can at least be like, oh, who is addressing the topics that is affecting me? And it's only one party.
Yeah, and I think part of the problem, too, for the left is that those topics have gotten worse in the past few years since they've taken office. So right now they don't have accomplishments or results in those areas to run on to say, continue to vote for me, we'll fix these problems, because inflation's gone up. There have been a lot of other issues that have, gotten worse. So there's really nothing to run on in that way, which is going to be an advantage, I think, to the right, because they're able to say, well, look, this is what it was before all these people took office. Do you want this back, or do you want to continue down this path?
Absolutely. And to your flip side, what do you believe that's going to happen during this election?
Yeah, I think that it's poised for a red wave. I think that it is going to go that way, and I guess we'll see later on with the results. And also, just so that you all know, we'll have another episode coming out analyzing the results when they come out on Wednesday, most likely. So be looking out for that. But yeah, I think we're definitely poised for that kind of red wave. We'll see what happens, but it should be interesting.
Yeah, and if you're listening and you're wondering, like myself, even maybe a couple years ago or a couple months ago, you're like, okay, what does a wave mean? How is that going to logistically affect who's going to be in Congress, who's going to be in the Senate? I hope, not hope, but we will address that on the next episode when we actually know the results, and we're going to tell you kind of what's that going to lead towards, what the right is going to be building up towards with that majority if it happens.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, and now taking it more local. So looking at the Pennsylvania race, we're here in Grove City, Pennsylvania, and we have been kind of right in the center watching this national race, which
Definitely.
is Oz and Fetterman. It's gone national. Clips have gone viral of their debate and of their campaign platform. So it's been something that I think a lot of people know a lot about. So looking at that, we'll just break down basically both candidates and their positions and what PA looks like, basically.
Yeah, so let's start with the Senate race, because that's been the most national news, at least clips going viral or the media giving them the time of day. And I just want to run down through what is John Fetterman all about and what is he campaigning on. It's easy as listening to an ad of his or at least going to his website and checking it out. And at least on his website he says, I have a 5-point plan to fix our economy. And those 5 include of making more stuff in America. But if you go to the website, that's maybe not the words that he uses, quote for quote, but make more, I just don't want to say it, it's a little vulgar. And then cut taxes for working people, ban Congress from trading stocks, slash out-of-pocket health care costs, and end immoral price gouging. The only thing relative to what I think people of Pennsylvania that have been answering surveys and driving them to the polls is only price gouging, but he doesn't get specific about it. He says that gas companies are immorally taking profits and not understanding the economic system. It seems that Fetterman is taking that route.
And I think that the debate that they did do broke into this a little more with being able to understand what his positions really are, because they did one debate, which was a disaster, I'd say, watching it. There are clips viral everywhere. Because Fetterman, and this is a sad thing, he had a stroke a few years ago, and it's been said that he is fine and recovered, but clearly watching him speak, it's not very coherent. So looking at someone who's running for such an important position, that's kind of concerning. That, first of all, there seems to be some problems there where he's been incoherent, and also, in addition to that, he's flip-flopped on issues and been unclear. For example, in the debate, he was asked about fracking because forever he's been against fracking, saying it should be banned. But obviously in Pennsylvania, that's not going to go over well because people in Pennsylvania, they're working, they care a lot about that. It's a really important part of the economy. So that wouldn't have gone over well. So in this last debate, he kind of stumbled to saying, in an incoherent way, I support fracking, but ban it, but I support it. So there hasn't been a clear answer on that. And then also on crime, he has a record of supporting, basically letting criminals out of jail. He has a record for voting to free murderers from jail and whatnot. So there's a long record there of, as far as criminal justice goes, where he wants to kind of take people out of jail that are violent criminals too. It's not just basic stuff. It's violent criminals, murderers. There's a long record. You can look up. There are videos upon videos of him making these statements. So That's very much out there. And on top of that, he says he wants to reimagine the police. So when crime is the biggest issue for voters, I just don't see how that's going to resonate.
Yeah, and I want to get into this, is that there's such a division between what is happening in all these Senate races. And then in PA, we find ourselves with a highly progressive candidate with John Fetterman. But then in other states, you see Democrats moving away from that progressive edge, where Fetterman wants to not abolish the police, but highly alter the police system, and a weird outlook and weird takes at how crime should be handled. And it almost parallels to Seattle, and that was just a mayhem, and then even San Francisco.
Yeah.
And so it's a weird line of thought of like how you want a policy and how you want a governance, but that is the progressive kind of outlook on it right now. But then when you look at what that has been causing on a national level, you see candidates, especially in the Ohio race, where, okay, yeah, the Democratic candidate is saying that he is a moderate, and he's trying to slash any kind of accusation that he is progressive, because he knows and understands what it has led to on the West Coast, and doesn't, in my opinion, probably doesn't understand why John Fetterman's running on this too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting to watch, because it's beyond the other health concerns that are very clear looking at the race at all and looking at Fetterman. Beyond that, even just the policy ideas just are bad and don't seem to be things that will be good.
So now let's hop into Dr. Oz and his campaign and what's he been talking about. We're going to go look at his website, which I think is the best alternative to listening to one of his speeches right here on the podcast. But look him up and look up his platform. And if you go to his website, it's a lot different compared to Fetterman's. And specifically is that he gives a mission statement for what his platform is, who he is. And I would say that he definitely highlights and stresses how important the middle class is to Pennsylvania, how important the family is to kind of America, he says, and the functioning of kind of the smallest little public square compared to the national level or anything. And so he goes on to talk about, he says, no government can substitute for the dignity of work, the security of health, and spiritual support of the family. So right on, he's drawing the line of the conservative views, which I appreciate. And then his top topics were rising prices, affordable health care, school choice, and securing the border. And obviously he's talking about, like we said, when compared to the national level, he's focusing on the topics that are actually being affected, that people are actually answering surveys about and are getting interviewed about, and saying that these are our top concerns. And I think it's really interesting because we haven't heard a lot about school choice in the past couple months, but we saw it be super effective in Virginia, and so with Tom Youngkin. And I think that he sees that success and understands its valuability right now in this race. Mm-hmm. What do you see as either helping Oz or what's going to hurt him in this election coming up?
Yeah, I think that focusing on those issues that Americans care so much about is going to definitely help him, and just the things that Americans every day are kind of faced with and impact their everyday life, instead of some of the other issues that the left is focusing on that are not everyday things that Americans are dealing with.
Mm-hmm. And I want to hit that. Okay, we talked about Fetterman, and kind of, I would say the biggest concern, or not the biggest concerns, but one of them is that, yes, he's getting over this tragic stroke that he had, and it's really affecting how he talks in debates and how we kind of view him as being an effective leader. And then on the other end, Dr. Oz is this reality TV show personality that is coming over and making the switch, similar to Donald Trump. And then so that's kind of where the media is either attacking him, or maybe where I think he could be the weakest point at is, okay, are you really this family man who is worried about the middle class, or are you using your celebrity to put yourself in a position of power?
Yeah, and I think this whole race, that's been a question, especially for people on the right, on is he really genuine? Should we support him? So I think it is interesting either way, and it certainly is a topic of discussion. I myself was looking at that and kind of wondering about it for a time. So just looking at it, it's definitely a really interesting race, and I think Pennsylvania specifically will be really interesting to see how it turns out. And also some of the other races, I'm interested to see how Arizona's with Kari Lake for governor will turn out against Katie Hobbs. That's been a really big one in the news as well.
Yep, and I'd say I've been really interested in is it J.D. Lance and Tim Ryan, I believe, in Ohio for that Senate race. That'll be super interesting, and I wish we had time to talk about it.
Yeah, the results are going to be huge either way, so breaking them down is going to be
which we
really
will
good.
have time on the next episode when we get to highlight and kind of go into a synthesis of what has happened and then what that real effects are. And then before we close out here, I want to just highlight that, again, Newt came the Honorable Newt Gingrich came and he gave some really good insight into politics, insight into Ronald Reagan in that time. But then he spoke about an insight on the PA Senate race, and he said, yeah, there are these concerns that we just talked about surrounding Oz being the celebrity coming in, but the biggest thing that is a pro for Dr. Oz, and I never really thought about it this way, is that Mastriano, I believe, Doug, if I pronounce that right, is the well-known conservative in PA right now, and he has that established credibility, and he is going to drive voters to get to the polls, and then also those votes are going to push up Dr. Oz's points right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with the candidates we do have, it's important to just look at, these are what we have. It's not even anymore really, there's not as much room to just discuss if we like them or not, because it's what we have, and we're going to be voting two very different ways is the point. Both candidates want to go very different ways. So
yeah, we got over the primaries. It's game time. Get to the polls, do your civic duty, get out there and vote, and we'll have a great episode coming up on how this is going to affect us in the next 2 years.
Yeah, so stay tuned for that and for, our episode breaking down the actual results, but make sure, as Aaron said, that you today get out and vote.
Oh, and before we leave, please check out, we'll have in the link, or hopefully coming up soon through the Institute for Faith and Freedom, is Grace's interview with the Honorable Newt Gingrich. So please
thanks,
check that
Aaron.
out.
Check that out for sure. It'll be up soon.
Yep, so again, please like and subscribe, and thank you for checking into Liberty Mail today.
Thank you.
For more information on the Institute for Faith and Freedom, visit faithandfreedom.com.